Hello everyone and welcome to an amazing attacking game that was played in the Battle of Generations event in 2013. It was in Moscow and it's a clash between Alexey Shirov and Daniil Dubov, former and modern masters of the mystic arts, and it's quite an amazing game and also quite an interesting match, but we're going to discuss match details after we check out the game, as tomorrow is the start of the FIDE Grand Swiss, so players will be rolling it out. First prize is $90,000, and it is also possible to qualify for the FIDE Candidates Tournament if you do well in the FIDE Grand Swiss. And one of the pairings of the first round is none other than Daniil Dubov versus Alexey Shirov. So I thought I'd prepare it with sort of a game that happened 12 years ago, but it's really a beautiful one. And also tomorrow I'll be live streaming an event on Lichess. We're going to have a nice tournament, the Lotus Chess September Arena. If you still haven't joined, first link in the description below. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's check out this game. So Alexey with white opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to c5 by Daniil, going for the Sicilian defense, knight f3 and pawn to e6, sort of the French Sicilian. d4, we have captures on d4, knight captures, and now knight to c6. Other moves are also very much playable here. a6 is very popular, knight to f6 is very popular. Knight to c6, I think, is the second most popular line. We have knight to c3 and queen to c7. This is the Bastrikov variation of the Taimanov Sicilian. We have bishop to e3, pawn to a6, and queen to d2. So Alexey preparing to castle queenside, nothing weird happening there. And this is usually met with knight to f6. But Daniil strikes with pawn to b5. And it's very easy to react to moves like pawn to b5. Point being that you could easily stop any pawn to b4 with a3, but not really. For example, black can just go knight f6. Let's say you castle queenside, and already pawn to b4, you have some problems here. Let's say captures, pawn to f3, you strengthen the pawn on e4, already d5. And if black can play d5 just like that on move 11, you know that, okay, maybe I could have played something better. So it's not necessary to stop b4. On the other hand, castling queenside is the most popular move here. Again, point being that if pawn to b4 now, you will put the knight on a4. And it looks like a very odd square for the knight. I've had this position many times in my online games. And then usually people just attack the knight with queen a5, which is a terrible move because you can just defend the knight and black is almost lost now, maybe even lost. And it's very easy to make a mistake here. For example, knight f6, you just capture on c6, and that's it. Captures bishop to b6. You attack the queen and you checkmate the black king on the next move. So it's a position where, of course, accuracy is more than required. And Alexey does not go for castles queenside, which is the most played move here. He just captures on c6. This is the second most played move. Queen captures and now castles queenside. And here Dubov goes for bishop to b7. Again, b4 here seems like an even better move now because the knight does not have access to a4. But this is Alexey Shirov playing, knight d5, and now you're just in a really bad position. Capturing on d5 is never a good, well, almost never. But if you capture on d5, captures attacks the queen, and after, let's say, queen a4, you can even play d6, and black is crippled. If you play queen captures on a2, which seems like, okay, you're threatening mate in 1, you can play queen d4 or even just capture on b4. You don't really mind this one check. You can just move the king to d2. And if knight f6, let's say you continue development, then even rook e1, and there is no surviving this. So it's just game over on the spot. Another nice idea behind knight to d5 is that if black doesn't react, you will just capture the pawn on b4. And then, okay, I mean, you're just up material. And if black decides to defend with pawn to a5, which also seems like a reasonable idea, well, then you throw in a bishop b5, where captures is impossible due to knight c7 check, picking up the queen. So you have to play something like queen to b7, and then comes knight b6, winning the rook. Or rather winning an exchange, and we maybe even don't care about that. There's a quadruple attack here on d7 which cannot be defended, so okay, black again falls apart here. So it's a very, very tricky position. b4 here, not a good move. So here bishop to b7, this is very good for Daniil. We have pawn to f3 and now rook to c8. Okay, it makes sense if the knight and queen move. Queen captures on c2 is checkmate, so that rook is very well placed on c8. We have pawn to g4, e4, knight to f6, and pawn to g5. Daniil goes knight h5, and bishop to h3. It looks like an odd move, but it's really not, and you'll see why. Daniil plays bishop to e7. He's preparing to castle kingside, and now comes the real reason of the bishop to h3 move, and that is bishop to g4. And this is a little bit of a problem for Daniil. Pawn to b4 can be included before playing pawn to g6. Daniil decides to go pawn to g6 right away. We have bishop captures, pawn captures, and now just pawn to h4. And okay, Daniil says, I don't mind, pawn to a5. Now he starts attacking on the king side, or rather the queen side. We have king to b1, always a useful prophylactic move. We have pawn to b4, challenging the knight, and knight to e2. We have pawn to a4, Daniil happily pushing his pawns on the queen side, and now knight to f4. We have pawn to b3, c captures on b3, a captures, and now what would you play here? Would you play a3 or would you capture on b3? That is a very, very interesting question here. Or would you ignore it completely and go something like rook to c1? All of these moves are, you know, maybe playable, but maybe they're just terrible. Sometimes a3 would make sense, but here it loses, or rather not loses. It allows black to get back into the game, because after queen to c2 check, you don't have the option of trading queens, as then comes with check, and you will also lose that rook on d1. So you're going to have to move the king, and then bishop captures on a3, and all of a sudden Dubov is not winning, but he is better. You can't capture due to pawn to b2 check, and then okay, it's just checkmate. So you would have to probably capture on c2, and then after b captures, you're going to go b captures on a3, better than allowing the pass pawn to remain here, and then after c captures on d1, rook captures, you get something like this, where, okay, Daniil would be up in exchange, Alexey would have a passed a pawn, so if anything, black is a little bit better. Not you know, a lot, but a little. So after a captures on b3, rook to c1 does seem to be the most reasonable move to play, as you can eliminate one of Dubov's attackers, and then you bring the other rook into the game. But he decided to play a captures on b3. Now the game becomes incredibly interesting. Daniil plays bishop to b4, attacking the queen, and of course you cannot capture. If you capture, then just the queen c2 check, king a1, and rook a8 check, and you resign. You have to give up the queen, and then you resign. But after bishop to b4, Alexey played queen to f2. And okay, how do you continue this? Daniil plays rook to a8. He's now ready to maybe play king e7, maybe castle, hoping to bring the other rook to c8, and then all sorts of ideas become possible. But Alexey just plays knight captures on h5. He says, you have nothing here. And he's actually correct. If you play a move like queen to a6, which does make a lot of sense, then comes knight f6 check, and it doesn't matter where you go, king f8 or king to d8. Let's say you go king to f8, bishop to c5 check, and after captures and captures with check, you go king to g7, let's say knight h5 check, king to g8, and now queen e5, threatening checkmate. There's no defense here. You can give a check, queen to a2 check, king to c2, rook to c8 with check, but now after the king moves, the queen guards against queen captures on b2, and also you cannot avoid checkmate. You can play king f8, but then you have to give up the rook with check, and the queen still remains on this diagonal. There's no threat that black can pose here. So after knight captures on h5, Daniil goes king to e7. He says, all right, safety first. Now we get the rook to c8, and then we know that queen to a6 is just winning. But Alexey plays knight f6. He says, all right, let's see it. And the problem is there's just not enough time. The d7 pawn is hanging. And there are a couple of ways you could handle this. You could go rook hd8, defend the pawn, but then bishop to b6. And okay, this is just losing, as you're going to have to give up the exchange. Another thing, after pawn to d6, which seems like a more reasonable move, then comes rook c1. You attack the queen, and now after queen a6, which again looks very nice for black, rook to c7 with check. And now after king to f8, you have queen to f1, and being up 2 pawns, black can't really afford a queen trade, and anything other than a queen trade, black simply doesn't have. You can give one check, queen to a2 check, king to c2, and there's just no follow-up here. So that's the problem. So Daniil tries something completely different, and unfortunately I don't have the clock times. Even though this was a classical game, I don't have the clock times, so maybe Daniil was in a little bit of a time trouble as well. He plays rook h to c8. He decides to give up the queen for the knight and rook. If if Alexey wants it. And of course, it is the best move, so Alexey wants it. Rook captures on d7, check. Queen captures, we have knight captures on d7, king captures on d7, and bishop to a7, stopping that rook from being active at all. And also, you cannot put a rook on the b file. Queen to b6 is coming, will put pressure on the two bishops, and also the rook is coming into the game. So is there anything for Daniil to try here? Well, of course, there's always something to try. He goes bishop to e6. Now the queen b6, if played right away, can be met with bishop to d3 check. And what do you play here? It's very, very unpleasant. You will have to go in front of one of the rooks and, let's say king a1, rook to c7. And all of a sudden, it's Daniil who's winning. So the position is not without poison. But rook to d1 check, we have king to e8, and now pawn to h5, saying that now there really isn't anything to be done here. The d3 square has been taken care of by the rook. And is there anything left for Daniil? He goes bishop back to e7. Pawn to g6, giving up a pawn to open up the black king. F captures, we have h captures, and now queen to b6, taking away all of the squares from black's pieces, attacking the bishop, attacking the pawn on e6. King to f7 defending, now hoping for maybe queen captures and then rook c7. Maybe you can, miraculously hold this to a draw. But after king to f7, we have rook to d7, and now there is nothing more Daniil can try. He tries bishop to e2, which is, a move, but queen to d6. Sorry, not that. It is Alexey Shirov, but queen to e6 is just too much. Queen to d6, and he was in this position on move 34 that Daniil Dubov resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So yeah, very, very, tough lesson for, I believe, 17-year-old Dubov at the time this game was played, and he didn't do much better in the match. It was a 6-game match, and Alexey crushed Dubov. He defeated him 5-1. 4 wins for Alexey and 2 draws, so Dubov did not win a single game. And I thought this would be a fine build-up for tomorrow's clash, where Daniil will have the white pieces, and we'll see what happens now in 2025. 12 years later, between these two fine gentlemen, as we like to refer to them, the masters of the mystic arts, as they just don't play regular chess. They, I've shown you the lines themselves they play they're full of poison. I mean, I've shown you a couple of lines here, but they're pretty wild. And here, okay, you're threatening queen captures, and if you defend, let's say you go rook e8, just bishop to c5, and you can't bring any more defenders here. Now you just start picking up material, and the white is already up material, so it's just completely winning for Alexey. So this was played in round 5 of the match, but like I said, 5-1 is an impressive result against whoever you play. And even though Daniil was 17 at the time, he already defeated some of the incredibly strong grandmasters of the world. So, it's not that it was an easy matchup for Shirov or anything. It's just that he was really, really good. And at 26.95, in 2013, that was quite the rating. So yeah, very much looking forward to what happens between these two gentlemen tomorrow, starting the FIDE Grand Swiss. And like I said, if you still haven't, you still have the time. There are over 200 people have joined already. First link in the description below. Join the Lotus Chess September Arena, and we're going to have a lot of fun. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Robert Kiefer, Edmund Freeman, Stephen Wentworth, Knight Master Bishop, and Christian Fisher for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. Really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.